Welcome to Toxic Family Stories. My name is Fiancé. He called me gutter trash. Said it in front of everyone, the head of NASDAQ, a former US Treasury Secretary, tech royalty, his spineless board, and my boyfriend. He leaned back in his chair, wine-stained teeth bared like a wolf, and spat out, "A girl like you should have stayed in the projects where you belong." Laughter followed. My hands bled from my nails digging in. But I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I'd already written the termination notice. Ever been humiliated and couldn't speak? Tell me where you're listening from. I reply to every comment. Let's begin. The chandelier above us dripped light like syrup, soft and golden, casting everything in that sickly rich warmth that made your skin feel foreign, like you didn't belong in your own body. I could hear the silverware whispering secrets between billionaires, plates clinking in passive rhythm, the hum of fake laughter and old money uncoiling itself across linen and crystal. I was seated to the left of Quinn, angled perfectly across from William Harrington, the man who ran oil, logistics, and politics like a puppet show. His cufflinks probably cost more than my mother's funeral. He had waited until dessert. Of course he did. He let me believe I'd earned my seat at that table, that I'd passed some test, answered every question about my tech firm with perfect tone. He even complimented my dress earlier, saying emerald suited bronze skin. That was his warm-up. That's how men like William bait the hook. The waiter placed a delicate slice of hazelnut cake in front of me. That's when William leaned forward, his voice just loud enough to carry, his tone a cocktail of amusement and contempt. "So tell me, Fiancé," he said, slow and condescending, "when you were growing up in the projects, did you ever imagine you'd be eating cake with the people who own this city?" The fork in my hand stilled midair. The room didn't go silent, not immediately. There was a half-second delay. Just long enough for a few people to chuckle, assuming it was a joke. One man, someone from JP Morgan, let out a soft OOF, but didn't look up. Then William smirked, lifted his glass, and added, "It's almost inspiring, really. From gutter trash to the head of a $4 billion firm. It's like watching a raccoon run a bank." Every neuron in my body surged hot with disbelief. I wasn't even sure I'd heard him right, not because I thought he wouldn't say it, but because part of me, the old part, the girl from Burnside Avenue, thought this couldn't be real. Not here. Not with Quinn sitting right next to me. But it was. I turned to him. His lips parted. Nothing came out. He stared at his father with the wide, paralyzed eyes of a boy who had been told don't embarrass the family. Not even a hand on mine. Not a word. I placed my fork gently on the edge of the plate. The sound was deafening in my ears. I reached for my napkin, folded it with clinical precision, and set it on the table. My chair barely made a sound when I stood up. Nobody stopped me. Not even Quinn. I didn't cry in the elevator. I didn't scream in the car. I didn't even take off my heels until I was back inside my apartment, where the city pulsed below me like a nervous animal. I walked straight to my office, turned on the single desk lamp, and opened the merger folder. $2 billion. 5 months of meetings. 18 drafted contracts. 42 internal approvals. All of it negotiated in good faith. All of it waiting for my final signature. I didn't tear it up. That would have been too poetic. Too indulgent. I just pulled up the termination clause, typed the date, typed the reason, material breach of leadership ethics in a public setting resulting in reputational damage, and hit print. I slept in that same chair, wrapped in an old sweatshirt, my earrings still in. My dreams were a blur of sirens and applause and silence. By the time the press got hold of the announcement, it was 6:42 a.m. My assistant Mira woke me up with 3 words, "You're trending everywhere." CNBC ran the headline, "Crosstech pulls plug on $2 billion Harrington merger, citing ethics breach." The article had a side-by-side image of me and William, both mid-speech at some old conference. His mouth open. Mine closed. The caption read, "A war of words, and silence." William didn't call me. Of course not. He called Ellis. Ellis, my CFO and the only person in this company who could go toe-to-toe with William without blinking, walked into my office with his usual steel calm and said, "He's losing his mind. Says this is personal sabotage. Wants to rectify the situation immediately." "Did he say sorry?" I asked. Ellis tilted his head, smirked. He said, "Let's not be hasty. That's white man for I'm never sorry." I laughed, but it had no sound. Quinn texted once. I didn't know what to say. I froze. "I'm sorry. Please let me explain." I read it twice. Then I turned off my phone. Naomi showed up 20 minutes later, red lipstick and rage. She didn't knock. She just stormed in, tossed a coffee on my desk, and said, "I swear to God, if you don't let me leak the audio, I will tattoo it on my damn forehead." I stared at her. "You recorded it." "I record everything when rich people drink," she said without missing a beat. "Especially when they're insulting the black woman who signs my checks. I don't want his words on loop. I want his crown." "Then what's the move?" I looked at the wall behind her. At the framed blueprint of Crosstech's first product. I thought of the 2 years I spent coding it in a room that smelled like mildew and ramen. I thought of Ivy coughing blood into her pillow at night because our heat had been cut off. "Let him come to me," I said. And he did. At 10:07 the next morning, William Harrington, in his $1,000 suit and 1,000-year ego, walked into Crosstech's lobby with 2 assistants and a face like curdled milk. He expected a red carpet. What he got was a receptionist who asked him to wait. "Do you have an appointment?" she said, smiling the same way Naomi does when she's about to bite someone's throat. "I am William Harrington," he said. She nodded politely. "And Zapira Cross is currently in a meeting. You're welcome to wait." He waited. 45 minutes. I watched him through the tinted glass of the upper floor, sipping tea, while Ellis timed the exact second the tension in his jaw cracked into visible rage. When I finally called him up, I made him wait an extra 3 minutes outside my office. The doors opened like a kingdom's gate. I was seated, calm, backlit by morning sun. He walked in and said, "Miss Cross, I believe we got off on the wrong foot." I didn't offer my hand. "You kicked the whole damn leg, William." He tried to smile. "That was a private dinner. I may have overstepped. You degraded me in front of half the financial elite," I interrupted, voice low but sharp. "You mocked my past. My mother. My bloodline. You did it because somewhere in your diseased idea of legacy, you think I haven't earned this seat." He blinked. Just once. Then said, "Your company needs the Harrington distribution network." "Our valuation," I stood. "Finally." And for the first time, he looked up at me. "Your company," I said slowly, "needed mine. You just didn't realize how much until I left you holding a naked deal in front of the world." There was no anger in his face now. Only calculation. A man who had spent his life winning. A man beginning to understand he'd already lost. "And just so you know," I added, "I've scheduled a meeting with Virian's CEO. Monday. 9 a.m. They're interested in a joint venture." His jaw locked. I leaned forward, whispered like a weapon, "Your throne isn't bulletproof, William." It was paper. And I just lit the match. He didn't answer. He left. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Naomi burst in laughing. Girl. You just slapped the patriarch of Wall Street with a copyright lawsuit in your eyes." I didn't laugh. I just sat down. My hands were shaking. Because the war had only just begun. There's a certain silence that follows public humiliation, not the loud kind, not the storm. It's colder than rage. It moves under your skin, in the soft tissues, like frostbite. You stop hearing people. You start hearing your pulse. That's where I lived, the entire morning after the dinner. The newsroom buzzed like a wasp nest. Ellis was fielding questions from CNBC on the 26th floor. Naomi was pacing the hallway with her iPad in one hand and a goddamn espresso martini in the other. It wasn't even noon. I was behind a closed door, watching a clip of myself on national television. No sound. Just my face, captured as I left that dinner, chin high, shoulders locked like armor. I didn't remember walking like that. I remembered the tremble. The way my spine begged to collapse. But the camera had caught something different. Something I hadn't felt in that moment. Power. There's a difference between having power and being seen as powerful. That image, that exit, it flipped the story. The financial press was calling it corporate defiance. Women on LinkedIn were reposting it with captions like, "When silence is louder than violence." But in the war room, where real stakes lived, we were playing chess with bombs. Ellis slammed the door behind him when he walked in. His usually calm voice was now a whip. Harrington's board just issued a preliminary statement. They're calling the merger cancellation a disappointing overreaction based on a private misunderstanding. They're painting you as emotional. I didn't even blink. Good. Let them keep underestimating me. He dropped the file on my desk. That's not all. Clara Sumner's name just surfaced. She's working the phones. Trying to soften blowback with investors. If they shift the narrative and keep the stock stable, they'll isolate William, not the company. So Clara's prepping for a coup, I said flatly. Exactly, he replied. And if she pulls it off fast enough, she might try to resurrect the deal, without William. I stood up, slow, the same way I used to get out of bed as a child after hearing my mom cry through the walls. A mix of dread and duty. She's not getting a second chance, I said. You don't insult the roots and then ask for the fruit. That was when Naomi barged in, again without knocking. She had a gift for timing, and this time, it was war in her eyes. 2 sources just leaked that Virion might preemptively pitch a merger before the Monday meeting. They're trying to kneecap the Harrington board with surprise headlines. My mouth twitched. Roy Chan moves fast. Fast and greedy, she muttered. This isn't a partnership pitch. It's a hostile flex. They smell blood. I looked out the window, down at the river of cars and people and cameras gathering at the front steps of the building like vultures circling a fresh carcass. Let them watch. Let them record it. Let history have footage of a woman dragging an empire by its silk tie. But first, they needed to understand the stakes. I walked over to the whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and started writing dates. Names. Shareholder breakdowns. Every percentage of control, my control. Here's what they don't know, I said. Our contract with Harrington wasn't just about distribution. It was structured to give us a controlling veto. William offered it to get me to say yes before the valuation adjusted post-IPO. He gave me the knife. He just didn't expect me to use it. Naomi exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since breakfast. You're telling me we can publicly declare we were the controlling partner in that merger? You want to kill the last of his credibility? I don't want to kill it, I said, uncapping another marker. I want to bury it. In marble. With a plaque that says, built by the woman he called gutter trash. Ellis nodded once. I'll prep a redline draft of the original clause and have it leaked to the ledger. I caught his eye. Not leaked. Donated. As a public service. His grin was razor thin. That night, the news ran hot with headlines. Cross had the power all along. Who really needed the merger? Sources say Harrington offered full control for a deal Zapira just walked away from. It was no longer about business. It was about perception. And William was hemorrhaging the only currency he truly worshipped, respect. The next morning, Quinn showed up at my door. He looked like hell. Hair undone, coat wrinkled, no driver. That meant something. Harrington men were not allowed to look human in public. I just need a minute, he said quietly, eyes searching mine. I stared at him for a long beat before I stepped aside. He didn't sit. Just paced. Hands twitching. Voice unsure. I should have stopped him. I should have said something, anything. He exhaled, the kind of breath you take before jumping out a plane. I was raised on silence. My father taught me that speaking out was weak. That loyalty to family came first. I folded my arms, my voice ice beneath the hurt. I wasn't asking for heroics, Quinn. I was asking for a pulse. A sign that I wasn't alone at that table. His head dropped. I froze. And I hated myself the second it happened. I didn't sleep. I haven't eaten. Because I know I lost you the second I stayed quiet. You didn't lose me because of him, I said, softer now. You lost me because when he cut me open, you watched me bleed. He stepped forward, voice breaking. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to say I'm done with that name. I don't want the legacy. I want to build something else, with you. Something real. For a second, I saw the boy underneath the suits. The one who used to sneak into code labs to watch me work. Who used to bring me peanut butter toast at 3 a.m. because I'd forget to eat. Who asked me, years ago, what would a future look like if we wrote the rules? But this wasn't that night. And this wasn't that question. Behind him, the screen on my desk lit up with a new headline. Roy Chan spotted entering Crosstech Tower, potential merger talks begin. I didn't answer Quinn. Not yet. Because the next move was mine. And every piece on the board was watching. The man who called me garbage was about to ride an elevator to the top floor of a tower I built from scratch. I could hear it humming its way up, glass and steel wrapped around a chamber of humiliation he thought would still bend for him. But this time, there was no polished oak boardroom waiting, no concierge with a silver tray. Just me. Just silence. Just the final few steps before his empire snapped under the weight of his arrogance. He was 45 minutes late to a meeting I hadn't scheduled. He had waited that long in my lobby. No one offered him water. No one acknowledged his presence. And not a single employee, not even the interns, bowed their heads when he passed. That was intentional. William walked in alone. His assistants had been turned away downstairs. Naomi had made sure of it. She called it decontamination. His tie was different this time. Striped navy silk instead of the blood-red satin from the dinner. It was supposed to soften him. Appear more reasonable. But his eyes, they were the same. Sharp and cold. The kind of cold that doesn't register on a thermometer but slices through bone. Zapire, he said, calm like a storm cell, I trust we can discuss this matter with mutual professionalism. I stood slowly. I wore black, not soft black, not morning black, but the kind that absorbs light and reflects nothing back. My heels clicked once against the floor. Just once. Enough to remind him that I stood taller now than I did in his dining room. Do you know what 45 minutes in a lobby feels like when no one will look you in the eye? I asked. His jaw didn't move. But his eye twitched. That was enough. He cleared his throat, controlled. I misjudged the impact of my words. You dehumanized me. His voice tightened. It was a joke. Misplaced, clearly. But, you weren't joking, I said, stepping forward. You were testing the threshold of what a black woman with power would tolerate in your house. He didn't respond. So I kept going. You believed I needed your name. Your table. Your network. You thought a girl from the Bronx would be so starved for approval that she'd laugh off being spat on like a street rat. I turned slightly, just enough to make him follow me with his eyes. But you weren't prepared for what I actually am. You didn't expect someone who remembers what it's like to be underestimated every second of her life. And you definitely weren't ready for what it means when that woman has leverage. He spoke softer now, like he was trying to corral a wild animal. You're clearly upset, I spun back on him. Don't do that. Don't reduce this to emotion. I'm not upset. I'm precise. There was a stillness that followed those words. The kind that shifts gravity. I gestured toward the screen behind me. Naomi, from the other room, activated the monitor. It lit up with the Crosstech Virion draft agreement, preliminary, confidential, and time-stamped that morning. William read it in silence. His throat moved once when he swallowed. This isn't a bluff, I said. He forced a breath through his nose. Roy Chan is a predator. He'll gut your company for parts. I walked toward the window. The skyline bled grey and gold. Far below, a crowd of reporters clustered with cameras lifted like rifles. Waiting. I know exactly what Roy is, I said without turning around. That's why I trust him more than I trust you. At least he never pretended to see me. I could feel his fury behind me. Not the loud kind. The kind that men like him coat in civility and try to call strategy. But I knew better. I'd lived through the real thing. Landlords who turned off our heat in winter, cops who smirked as they raided our building, Teachers who told me I wasn't leadership material because I didn't make eye contact. He took one step forward, as if proximity would soften me. I'm willing to issue a public apology, he said. I'll call the press. A statement of regret. I turned to face him. You don't understand. This isn't about apology. It's about memory. I want people to remember that you made the wrong bet. That the woman you dismissed just destroyed your valuation in under 72 hours. You'll damage your own reputation in the process, he snapped, the calm finally cracking. No one will trust you after this. I smiled, small and sharp. You still think reputation is about politeness. Mine was built on proof. He stared at me. The kind of stare people give when they're trying to see the edge of something, trying to find where it ends, how far it spreads, how dangerous it really is. Then he left. He didn't slam the door. He didn't shout. But I knew, he'd finally heard me. Naomi burst in seconds later, holding her phone like it was a detonator. Media's already calling it the lobby incident, she said breathlessly. The image of him sitting alone in that chair went viral. Someone snapped it. Caption says, waiting for the queen he called trash. I sat down, slow. My knees finally trembling. It took everything I had not to let them see. Do we have the shareholder numbers? I asked, voice steady only because I'd practiced this moment in my head 1,000 times. Ellis stepped in next. Clara's circling. She's scheduled a private leadership review for Monday. She wants to neutralize William before earnings call. Does she know we're watching her move? I asked. He nodded once. She knows. And she thinks she's smarter than us. Good. Let her believe that. Let them all. I stood again and looked out that window, where the old world was cracking beneath our feet. Below us, the future was forming. But inside me, something colder was forming too. Because the one thing I hadn't told anyone, not Naomi, not Ellis, not even Quinn, was what I planned to do next. And if I did it, there'd be no going back. The financial news cycle didn't rest. It devoured, rewound, and fed on itself like a snake eating its own tail. By Friday afternoon, Crosstech was no longer a tech company, it was a cautionary tale, a case study, a goddamn revolution in heels. They called me the quiet assassin on the front of Business Weekly. The subheading said, she brought down Harrington with a closed mouth and a pen. But the truth was more brutal. It wasn't the pen that broke him. It was the silence in the boardroom that followed. Inside Harrington Tower, the air had thickened with fear. Clara Sumner moved like perfume, pleasant to the nose, deadly in the lungs. She had always been elegant in her complicity, that kind of soft racism wrapped in compliments, like calling me polished in interviews and so articulate when I pitched numbers. But now she wanted William gone. Not because he was wrong, but because he had become unprofitable. That's what women like her do. They smile at you while wiping the blood from the blade they handed to someone else. Ellis called it first. Clara doesn't want to save the company. She wants to own the cleanup. She's positioning herself, Naomi said, mouth tight, eyes scanning her tablet. Leaking quotes to the press. Playing both sides. She's blaming William for the fallout while telling investors she can still bring Crosstech back to the table. She can't, I said flatly. Naomi looked up. You sure? She's trying to cast herself as the reasonable white woman in the room. But I'm not in that room anymore. I burned the damn floorboards. Ellis chuckled under his breath, then turned serious. We need to escalate. If they're prepping a vote, we need to make sure William stays in the chair long enough to tank it. And how do you plan to do that? Naomi asked, crossing her arms. We let Clara think she's winning. The room fell still. I nodded once. I want her to see what it feels like to believe she has the throne, and then watch it collapse under her heels. Naomi grinned slowly, like a wolf catching the scent of something tender. That's some cold chess. It's not chess, I said. It's memory. They need to remember what happens when they underestimate me. I want the next woman like me, the girl in the coding lab, the one who didn't go to Stanford, the one who takes the bus to pitch meetings, to know this game isn't closed. And just like that, the room reset. Our moves had to come faster now. Quinn was the only piece I hadn't played, the only one whose value I hadn't decided yet. He'd sent 2 more messages. The last one just said, "Tell me what I can do. I'll do it." But what could he do? His name was a wound now, bleeding from both ends. Staying would make him a traitor. Leaving would make him mine. And I wasn't sure what I wanted from him yet. Not love, not anymore. Not after he froze like stone while his father sliced me open. Later that night, I stood alone in the elevator descending to the garage, wrapped in a silence so complete it felt surgical. My reflection in the mirrored walls didn't blink. I looked expensive. Untouchable. But inside, I was tightening. I hadn't visited Ivy in 3 weeks. Too long. Too guilty. I texted her, "Coming by. You home?" She replied in seconds, "Always." Her building still smelled like bleach and resignation. A non-profit shelter run out of a converted church basement. The paint peeled near the vents. Her room had no door, just a curtain and a handwritten sign that said no stealing. No lying. No yelling. Ivy was on the floor, painting her nails with stolen polish, toes flexed in the air. Her hair was braided back, face fresh. Sober. She looked younger than me, even though she'd lived harder. "You finally decided to remember I exist," she said, only half joking. "I've been busy," I said. "Too busy to check if your only sister is still breathing." I sat beside her. The floor was cold. The kind of cold that seeped into your ribs. "I'm sorry," I said. She looked at me with the kind of stare that only people who've survived fire can give. "Don't apologize. Just tell me what's happening." So I did. Everything. The dinner. The insult. The silence. The retaliation. The pending war. And at the end of it, she just whistled, low and soft. "Damn," she said. "You finally lit the match, huh?" I didn't want to. But he made it too easy. She shrugged. "Maybe. But you've been carrying that gas can for a long time." I looked at her. "Do you think I'm becoming him?" Her face shifted. For the first time, she was gentle. "No. He tears people down because it makes him feel big. You tear people down when they try to build on your grave." I leaned back against the wall. My head throbbed. Not from pain, from the weight of decisions I hadn't made yet. Ivy nudged me. "You still love Quinn?" "I don't know," I whispered. "Then you don't," she said simply. "If it was real, you'd feel it like a punch in the chest." I looked at her then. Really looked. My little sister who once sold her pills to keep our lights on. Who took the hits from Mom's boyfriend so I didn't have to. Who nearly died twice, and still smiled like she had a secret. "I need you to stay clean," I said, voice barely holding. "I am," she whispered. "And I'm watching you." I left her with $20, a hug that held too long, and a pit in my stomach that didn't loosen even when I reached the top of my own tower. Waiting at my office door was Quinn. No guards. No warning. Just him, standing there, holding a folder. "I'm not here to beg," he said. "Then why are you here?" I asked, stepping past him. He followed me in and set the folder on my desk. "That's my formal resignation from the Harrington Trust. I'm out. No name, no money, no board seat." I blinked. "You're cutting yourself off." "I'm building my own," he said. "With you. If you'll have me." I opened the folder. It was real. He had burned his bridge for me. "I don't know if I trust you," I said honestly. He nodded. "Then don't. Just watch me." I stared at him. At the man who hadn't spoken for me when it mattered, now standing in front of me with nothing left but choice. Outside, the city was quiet. Inside, I was rearming. By Monday morning, the streets outside Harrington Tower were lined with press vans. Reporters stood with windblown hair and hollow eyes, waiting for something, anything, that would signal the old empire was still alive. But inside, it was already rotting. The leather on the boardroom chairs still looked smooth, the espresso still hissed from the private barista station, and William Harrington still wore his signature lapel pin like it meant something. But the eyes around him were shifting. Not in loyalty. In calculation. Clara had them in her grip now. She was elegance on the attack. Her voice carried calm while her hands rearranged legacy like it was furniture. The vote wasn't official yet. But the room was already divided. Across town, in my tower of glass and resolve, Naomi walked into my office with a copy of the morning edition. The headline read, "Clara Sumner, the woman to restore Harrington's empire?" A flattering photo of Clara in pearls and confidence took up half the page. Underneath, the article teased a redemption arc. Sources say she's in early talks to rebuild the Crosstech deal. Naomi dropped the paper on my desk like a corpse. "They're spinning it. They're rewriting your revenge as her reform." I didn't look at the photo. "Let them try. She's coming for your crown, Zed." I looked her dead in the eye. "She can reach for it. But she won't be able to lift it." Ellis joined us 10 minutes later with his tablet and the look he gets when numbers tell a darker story than headlines. "She's moving fast," he said. "Pitched an emergency vote for noon. She's promising to stabilize the merger and distance the board from Williams' misconduct." "Which means she's painting me as a victim," I muttered, teeth tight. "A pawn she can rescue. That way, she keeps the deal, softens the scandal, and pretends she's the adult in the room. She wants to be the white knight," Naomi said bitterly. "Emphasis on white." I stood, slow, breath steady but building in heat. "Then we make her own sword cut her." The room stilled. Ellis raised an eyebrow. "You ready for that kind of exposure?" "I was born in exposure," I said. "They just didn't expect me to survive it." I pulled up a file I'd been holding back. My last card. A confidential audit. Commissioned months ago. It detailed financial discrepancies during Clara's tenure as lead strategic officer. Nothing criminal. But enough to prove negligence, enough to shake confidence in her leadership integrity. I didn't need to bury her. I just needed to crack her halo. Naomi stared at the document, then looked at me. "You're about to throw a grenade into a glass room." "I'm not throwing it," I said. "I'm handing it to her with the pin still in." Ellis nodded once. "We leak this, Harrington shares tank another 12% before lunch." I closed the file. "Send it. Anonymously. Make it look like it came from inside." And it did. By 10:43 a.m., the story broke. Clara's photo disappeared from the network rotation within 20 minutes. The new headline read, "Sumner under scrutiny as audit leaks raise questions." At Harrington Tower, the boardroom lights flickered. Not literally, but politically. Clara still called for the vote, but her tone had changed. More urgent. Less polished. William watched her with a smirk that wasn't forgiveness. It was the kind of smile men wear when they know a woman is about to fail by the very ladder she climbed. Quinn texted at 11:12 a.m. "They're circling each other. No one trusts anyone now. You broke the spine." I read it once. Then deleted it. At 11:58 a.m., the vote was cast. At 12:04 p.m., William Harrington was officially removed as CEO of Harrington Industries. It wasn't loud. There were no fists. Just a quiet line drawn in ink and corporate betrayal. But what followed was seismic. The market responded with blunt force trauma. Harrington shares dropped 15% in 2 hours. Their communications team pushed out a hollow statement about leadership renewal and recommitment to values, but the street saw it for what it was, collapse in slow motion. I sat in my office, watching the ticker bleed red across the screen. Naomi leaned against the doorframe. "You did it." "No," I said. "We started it." Thanks for listening this far. Stay with me, there's more. Like, share, and subscribe, it helps us keep making these stories for you. And in the comments, what do you think about my journey so far? What would you have done differently? Let's continue. Because the next call wasn't mine. It was Roy Chan's. He arrived at 2:27 p.m. sharp. No fanfare. Just him and a black folder. Roy had always been the shark circling the wreckage. But he didn't swim toward desperation. He swam toward power. He extended the folder across my desk without sitting. Terms for a strategic merger. Crosstech remains operationally independent. You lead joint ventures. Full parity. No dilution. I flipped through the pages. Clean. Precise. Aggressive. You want Harrington's corpse, I said. I want your future, Roy corrected. Theirs was always yesterday's empire. You're the next decade. I looked him in the eye. Why now? He smiled. Because after what you just did, no one doubts you can run a war. But I'm here to help you win the peace. Naomi watched the entire exchange with arms folded. Silent but electric. I didn't answer Roy then. Not yet. I needed something first. Something small. Something symbolic. I'll call you tomorrow, I said. He left without protest. That was his style. Offer. Wait. Strike. And then, like clockwork, the media began to shift. Crosstech holds the cards in tech power shift. Harrington collapse sparks historic realignment. All eyes on Zapire Cross. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about what came after. At 6 p.m., I sat alone in the dark, watching the city flicker. The email came through. Subject, final sign-off, new company name and branding approvals. The attached image was simple. A new seal, sleek and black, the old Harrington lion replaced by a phoenix. The name? Crosshaven. Our name. Mine and Quinn's. I didn't smile. Not yet. Because tomorrow, we would announce it to the world. But tonight, I needed one last thing. Closure. So I opened a new message to William Harrington. No greeting. No goodbye. Just one sentence. The woman you called garbage just inherited your kingdom. And then I hit send. The morning after William was removed, the air tasted different. Thinner. Sharper. Like the sky had been stretched too tightly over the city, as if even the clouds were holding their breath. That silence, the one before a public execution, echoed through every elevator ride, every inbox, every boardroom. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew what was coming. The Queen was about to claim the body. Our press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. Midtown. Glass Auditorium. 4 to 7 media outlets confirmed. Stockholders flown in. Every seat filled before the hour. I wore white. Not for peace, for contrast. The kind of white that made me look untouchable under stage lights. Naomi had insisted. Let them photograph the woman who dismantled their god in clean daylight. Outside, the building's curved windows reflected the swarm of cameras gathered like they were witnessing a coronation and a crucifixion at once. Inside, I walked the hallway like it was a runway made of old bones. Naomi touched my arm before I went on stage. Her voice low. This is it. Everything turns today. Ellis stood behind her, holding the folder that contained the final deal documents. Harrington's lawyers signed 5 minutes ago. Roy's people signed 20 before that. It's done. The door to the auditorium opened. A staffer's earpiece crackled as she gave the signal. Time to step in. The hum of lights. The clicks of cameras. The room exhaled as I walked to the podium, and for a moment, I felt the weight of history in the marrow of my spine. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't smile. I spoke straight into the mic like it was mine from the beginning. Today, we confirm the successful merger between Crosstech and Harrington Industries under new leadership and new vision. Behind me, the new seal dropped on the screen, black and burnished chrome, no lions, no crowns. Just the clean lines of a phoenix rising. I didn't look back. I just let it burn. Let me be clear, I said, voice calm but iron-edged. This is not a rescue. This is a reckoning. We are not here to uphold a broken legacy. We are here to replace it. The crowd stirred. Flashes popped like popcorn. Someone gasped when I said the next part. William Harrington's time is over. But more importantly, the era he represented, of unchecked entitlement, of silencing the underestimated, that era ends today. The silence that followed was volcanic. Then came the applause. Not loud. Not polite. But sharp. Sharp enough to split something open. Quinn joined me on stage, wearing a charcoal suit, no tie, eyes steady. This new entity, I continued, will be co-led by myself and Quinn Harrington, now Quinn Cross. That one landed. I didn't watch the front rows, but I knew Clara was there, tucked behind tinted glasses, expression flat. She had hoped for survival. I gave her a front row seat to her own irrelevance. After the formalities, after the cameras dimmed and the reporters began typing their breathless rewrites, I stepped off stage and into a hallway that smelled of glass cleaner and sweat. Quinn followed, slower, quieter. "You didn't have to take my name," I said. "I didn't," he replied. "I gave up mine." And he had. The trust. The holdings. The old handlers who used to speak for him. Gone. All of it. He'd walked into the fire and came out scorched, but standing. "I need to know you're in this for the long war," I said. "I'm in this," he said, "because of the woman you became while I was still learning to speak." I didn't answer. Not yet. Not with words. Later, in the boardroom, Naomi handed me a glass of champagne and didn't toast. She just looked at me and said, "You know they'll come for you now, right?" "I know," I said. "Let them." Ellis added, "There's already a whisper campaign. That you manipulated William. That Quinn's just your puppet. They're trying to paint this as ambition run wild." "I am ambition run wild," I said. They should have thought of that before they poked the wolf. That night, Crosshaven's website went live. Clean, dark, absolute. My letter to the public was the homepage. "We rise not from privilege, but from the fire of those who tried to silence us. We don't inherit power. We take it." It went viral within hours. Women sent messages. Men sent warnings. Tech CEOs sent congrats emails wrapped in thinly veiled threats. But none of that mattered. Because the next morning, Marcus Klein, the senior financial journalist from the Ledger, requested an exclusive. Not with the company. With me. He wanted to know how I did it. Not the logistics. The soul of it. The rage of it. The coldness that made it possible. "I don't usually do interviews," I told him when he called. "Which is why they'll listen," he said. I agreed. We met in a small room on the 60th floor. Just a table. A recorder. A man with tired eyes and a reverent tone. He pressed record and asked, "Was this revenge?" I leaned forward, just enough for the MIC to catch it. "No," I said. "This was restoration." The interview dropped 2 days later. The pull quote made headlines again. "You don't destroy empires because you hate them. You destroy them because they tried to bury you alive." But I wasn't done yet. Because I had one more move. One no one expected. One that even Quinn didn't know about. And it was already in motion. The walls of my new office were still bare. That was intentional. I wanted the space to feel transitional, a liminal room between what had died and what was coming. No framed degrees. No family portraits. Just glass, silence, and the shadow of the skyline stretching across the floor like a premonition. Everyone thought the story ended with the press conference. They thought the seal drop, the rebrand, the dethroning, that was the finale. That's how shallow they were. They still believed power was the performance. But legacy isn't built at the podium. It's built in the aftermath. It was Friday when Roy Chan came back, this time not with a folder, but with a favor. He wanted access. Not just operational synergy. He wanted to embed his Virion teams inside Crosshaven's AI division, my core, my roots. I read through the new draft. It was worded gently, dressed in business language, but the intent was naked. Roy wanted more than a seat at the table. He wanted the knife I'd used to carve it. He stood across from me, polished as ever. No nerves. That was the thing about Roy, he moved like a man convinced of his inevitability. "You know what I'm asking for," he said. I didn't look up. "You're asking to own a piece of the engine. I'm offering shared velocity," he said smoothly. "Your vision. My reach." I closed the folder. I built this engine with no reach, no investors, and no room for error. Don't talk to me like I owe you momentum. His mouth twitched. The smallest shift. But I saw it. The disappointment. The recalibration. He said, "Don't make the mistake Harrington made." And just like that, he overplayed his hand. I stood. Walked to the window. The city was crawling below, glowing from the burn of progress. "You know what the real mistake was?" I asked quietly. He thought I'd trade my silence for a seat. You're doing the same, just with better manners. I turned. Roy was already stepping back. You've made yourself clear, he said. Good, I replied. Because next week, we announce a new partnership. Not with you. With Taronet. That one landed. Taronet was Roy's clean competitor, smaller, younger, less ruthless. But what they had was ethics. They'd been bootstrapped out of Detroit and quietly built sustainable, open-source tech that didn't mine data like a casino. The deal wasn't about expansion. It was about a statement. I would not become William, even dressed in different skin. Roy didn't shake my hand when he left. I didn't offer it. Once the door closed, Naomi burst in like a thunderclap. You really just cut him loose, she said, half breathless, half thrilled. He wasn't building with me, I said. He was trying to build on me. Ellis joined us seconds later, reading from his tablet. Taronet's board is in. They'll match Roy's numbers. And they're giving you full transparency on the AI side. Naomi smirked. So we win and we stay clean? For now, I said. But the spotlight doesn't dim. It just heats up. The next day, the partnership leaked, deliberately. Naomi had scheduled the leak through 2 independent reporters who'd long covered corporate corruption. The narrative was sharp, moral, dangerous. Crosshaven chooses ethics over empire, ditches Virion for tech that doesn't exploit. The article quoted me directly. I'd written the line myself. We don't scale by selling out. We scale by standing firm. It went nuclear. Roy's stock dipped. Taronet surged. Our inbox overflowed. CEOs sent texts pretending to be impressed. VC vultures tried to get meetings. And William, ever silent, didn't issue a word. Not even a whisper. But Quinn did. That night, he sat across from me in our apartment, hands still, gaze steady. We hadn't spoken much since the press conference. Too many eyes. Too much motion. You know what everyone's saying, he asked softly. That I've gone too far. I replied. That you've changed. I paused. Do you think I have? He didn't flinch. No. I think you've finally let them see who you always were. We sat in that silence for a moment. There was something soft between us again, not quite forgiveness, but something that looked like future. I need you to take the CTO chair, I said. He blinked. Me? You're better at system integration than anyone. And I trust you with the tech more than I trust anyone else. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. That's a huge risk. I know, I said. That's why I'm asking you. He nodded. Not instantly. Not with fanfare. But with something deeper. A man standing up into the name he'd chosen. Later that night, I sat alone with my laptop and pulled up a file labeled Legacy Notes. It was something I hadn't opened in 3 years. A half-finished manifesto. A blueprint I'd started back when CrossTech was just 5 people and a dream written in code. At the top of the doc, in all caps, I'd written, "This is not about winning. This is about rewriting the goddamn rules." I stared at that line for a long time. And then I added a new one underneath. And this time, they'll remember our names. But just as I hit save, a message popped up. Anonymous sender. 1 sentence. You think this is over? Watch your back. No signature. No trace. But I already knew who it was. And I already knew what he'd try next. The press conference announcing the Crosshaven Taronet alliance wasn't supposed to break the internet. But it did. The livestream glitched twice under the weight of viewership before stabilizing just in time to capture the opening line. I stood in front of the screen displaying the merged logos, a phoenix nested in the hollow of a circuit tree, and said, "This isn't about size. This is about what we plant and what we burn." By the time I finished, the view count had passed 8 million. The comments were a live wire of praise, warnings, speculation, hate, awe. Naomi monitored the entire stream from backstage, jaw set like a soldier watching a field fill with snipers. Back at headquarters, Ellis had pre-scheduled the shareholder emails. Every sentence vetted. Every metric precise. The Taronet deal was airtight. It made us cleaner, smarter, and more defensible. But what made it dangerous was me. Because I had taken everything William built, gutted it, and used the bones to construct a weapon that couldn't be ignored. The final part of the event was unplanned. Quinn stepped up beside me at the podium. No teleprompter. No notes. Just him, calm and clear, reaching into his jacket pocket to pull out a small velvet box. The cameras froze. The internet didn't blink. "I've watched her build empires," he said into the mic, voice steady. "I've watched her walk away from ones that didn't deserve her. And I've watched her burn down the ones that tried to own her. Today, I'm not asking for partnership. I'm asking for legacy." He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Platinum. No diamond. Just a band carved with the schematic lines of her first product, the tech she wrote on her mother's kitchen table when she was 17 and the power was off. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like time was stretching just for us. I reached out, closed the box, and said into the mic, "Yes." The room didn't erupt. It held its breath. That moment, that image, was the war won in silence. Naomi said later the clip hit 10 million views in 4 hours. The caption that trended wasn't engagement announcement. It was, "From gutter trash to empire." But even as the applause echoed and the seal behind us gleamed under the lights, I felt it. That pressure. That tremor beneath the floorboards. The message I'd gotten the night before hadn't been empty. "You think this is over? Watch your back." It didn't come from William. He didn't have the subtlety. It came from someone worse. Clara. The woman who had waited, smiled, and played both sides. The woman who had helped William rise and plotted his fall the moment it suited her. The woman who now saw me not as a symbol, but as an obstruction. She showed her face again 2 days later. A feature in Forbes Women. A glowing profile. No mention of the audit leak. No mention of her failed coup. Just a few glancing quotes about inclusion, grace, and learning from transition. But tucked deep in the article, behind a paywall and 1,000 words of fluff, was the threat. She said, "I think Miss Cross has done a remarkable job. But we have to ask, when someone rises this fast, who's keeping her accountable?" Naomi sent me the screenshot. "She's baiting you. She's bluffing," I said. But then Ellis burst into my office with something I didn't expect. "She sold her shares," he said, out of breath. "What?" "She dumped all her Crosshaven shares. Quietly. Last week. Right before the Taronet leak. We didn't catch it in time." "How many?" "Enough to trigger a mandatory disclosure in 3 days. Once the SEC catches it, it'll spark questions." "She's trying to tank us," I said. "She's trying to say she saw something coming, that she got out before the fall." Naomi folded her arms. "If people think Clara knows something we don't, the market panics. You lose the narrative." I stared at the glass. Not at the skyline. At my reflection. The weight of it all pressing down again, the way it used to when I was running code on 4 hours of sleep and a 6-figure deadline breathing down my neck. "She wants me to crack," I said. "To overreact. To fight her in public so she can claim maturity." "Then don't fight her," Naomi said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm going to thank her." 2 hours later, I recorded a statement. Just 60 seconds long. I looked straight into the camera and said, "I want to publicly thank Clara Sumner for her investment in Crosshaven. Her support, past and present, helped shape the foundation we stand on. I wish her the best in whatever she chooses to build next." No heat. No war. Just elegance sharpened into a blade she couldn't swing back at me. The media ate it up. Zapira Cross declines to engage in corporate drama, keeps eyes on the future. Crosshaven remains steady amid boardroom whispers. But privately, I prepared. Clara's next move wouldn't be financial. It would be personal. She'd come for the narrative. For my credibility. And I had to beat her to it. Which meant doing the one thing I'd been avoiding. Telling the truth. All of it. The Bronx. The hunger. The shelters. The day I stole coding textbooks from a second-hand shop just to teach myself Java. The night Ivy OD'd in the hallway and I carried her down 4 flights of stairs because the ambulance never came. The parts they didn't know. The parts they couldn't weaponize if I said them first. So I wrote it. Not as a statement. As a letter. And I gave it to the ledger. Marcus read it twice before he called me. His voice was quiet, reverent. You know this will strip the armor. I'm not here to wear armor, I told him. I'm here to build something no one can burn. The article dropped at midnight. No one slept after that. The article was titled, The Code Beneath the Crown. Marcus didn't change a single word. Not even the messy parts. Not the shame. Not the blood. Not the sentence where I wrote, I used to keep a switchblade under my pillow, not to use it, just to sleep better knowing I could. The piece went live at 12:01 a.m. By 12:10, I was getting messages from women I'd never met. Coders. Nurses. Single moms. Founders. Fighters. Survivors. Each one of them wrote some version of, I see myself in this. By sunrise, it wasn't a profile. It was a movement. Every outlet picked it up. Not the tech ones first, the human ones. The Atlantic. Teen Vogue. ProPublica. Then Fast Company and Wired followed. Even the bitter ones, the ones that had once dismissed me as a temporary flame, were forced to admit what was clear now. I wasn't playing their game. I'd built my own. And they were all inside it. But that morning, I didn't wake up in a high-rise. I woke up in a narrow twin bed, under a floral blanket that smelled like old soap and Lysol. Ivy's room. I had gone there without telling anyone. No security. No Quinn. Just me. Just the need to be somewhere where none of it would be performative. She was still asleep when I crept out into the shared kitchen. A woman in a hoodie offered me burnt coffee without asking my name. She just slid it over and said, "You look tired." I nodded. "I am." I sat by the window. Outside, the world looked small again, pigeons fighting over a crust of bread, kids dragging backpacks too heavy for their size, a man on the corner selling incense and broken headphones. This was where I came from. This was the place I was never supposed to survive, let alone return to with power. Ivy found me there, her braid messy, her voice still hoarse. I read it. I turned toward her. She had the printed article in her hand. Highlighted. Folded. Annotated like a textbook. "You told them about me," she said softly. "I told them about us." She sat down across from me and pushed something across the table. A tiny object wrapped in tissue paper. I unwrapped it. Inside was a rusted house key, one of ours from when we were kids. Probably from that third-floor walk-up with the mold behind the sink and the roaches that wouldn't die. "I kept this," she said, voice tight. "Even when I was using. Even when I didn't know my own name." "Why?" I asked. She shrugged. "'Cause it opened something once. I guess I hoped it would again." I held it like it was gold. Because in a way, it was. It was proof. Not of where we were from, but of what we'd survived. When I got back to headquarters, Quinn was waiting in my office. The look in his eyes was different this time. Not cautious. Not reverent. Something fuller. "I don't think you realize what you just did," he said. "I do," I said. I stopped letting them control the origin story. He crossed to me and held out a small slip of paper. "Then maybe it's time we write the next one." It was a date. A venue. A time. "Our wedding?" I asked, eyebrows lifted. "Press conference and wedding," he said, half grinning. "We announce the public roadmap. Then we show them what building together looks like." I stared at him. "You're proposing a merger and a marriage on the same stage?" I figured that's what legacy really is. I said nothing for a long second. Then I laughed, for the first time in weeks. The announcement broke the following Monday. Cyrus Shaven announces marriage of founders, literal and corporate. The photo went viral before we even stepped on stage. Me and Quinn in black suits, side by side, hands linked, the Crosshaven seal behind us being taken down. In its place, a new symbol, the engine schematic from my first invention fused with Ivy's key, laser-etched into a silver ring. They caught the moment the bolts clicked into place. That image was everywhere. Not just news. Art. Memes. Murals in Bushwick. Skateboards in Oakland. It didn't belong to us anymore. And that was the point. That night, Naomi hosted the afterparty in a rooftop warehouse flooded with music, light, and sweat. No donors. No press. Just our people. She climbed a crate to make a toast. Wobbled. Didn't care. To the girl who wasn't supposed to win, Naomi shouted. To the empire that wasn't supposed to exist. And to every one of us who survived the dinner and stayed for the damn feast. I didn't cry. I smiled. And I let the beat drown the noise for a moment. But even in that glow, I felt it. That final flicker. Not from Clara. Not from William. Not even from the market. It came from inside me. Because the thing they never tell you about revenge is what happens after. After the empire is yours. After the power shifts. After the old gods fall. The silence returns. Not the kind that bruises. The kind that asks, "What now?" And I wasn't sure. Not fully. But I knew this. I had one more story to tell. And it belonged to someone who hadn't spoken yet. If you felt something listening to mine, if you were ever underestimated, overlooked, or told to sit down and smile, then you need to hear Nina Green's story. Click on the next video. Listen to her. Because no one else will tell it like she can. 3 months later, I walked into that same Fifth Avenue restaurant, the one where William had called me gutter trash, but this time, no one dared look away. The maître d' stammered when he saw me. I didn't say a word. I just walked past him, past the gold sconces and white linen, past the table where it all happened, and sat at the bar. Alone. On purpose. I ordered tea. Not champagne. Not wine. Just tea. Because I didn't need to toast to anything. I was already living the answer. Behind me, whispers rippled. Not disrespect. Recognition. Reverence. Fear. I'd rebuilt more than a company. I'd changed the language. In meetings now, I heard words like integrity and origin where once it was just valuation. Women walked into boardrooms carrying fire, not apologies. I knew. They wrote to me. Ivy was clean. Still. Running coding workshops for girls in recovery. She framed the key she gave me and hung it above her desk. Quinn and I were building. Not a life, a world. William never reached out again. Clara tried to. Once. I didn't open the email. Some people ask if I forgave them. I don't answer. Forgiveness was never the point. The point was survival, and not just my own. I paid the bill. Stood. Walked slowly toward the exit. At the door, a woman in a server's uniform stopped me. She couldn't have been more than 22. She leaned in and whispered, "You made space for me." I looked her in the eye and said, "Then use it." Then I stepped back into the street. Not as someone who had arrived, but as someone who had made a way in. And left the door open behind her.
Thank you for staying until the end. If you're still here, that's not an accident. Something in this story hit a nerve, maybe because you've lived through something like it, or maybe because you know someone who has. That's exactly why Toxic Family Stories exists. We bring the hidden truth to light. We say what most people are too afraid to admit happens, every day, behind closed doors. This isn't just storytelling. This is survival. This is pain. This is revenge. We drop a new story every single day, family betrayal, deep scars, and the kind of truth that makes people uncomfortable. If you want these voices to keep being heard, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep going. And drop a comment. What do you think about her journey so far? What would you have done differently? And now, don't stop here. Click on the next story.